Hello, everybody. BL here. How are you? Hoping that you're doing well and working on your puzzle. I'm a little delayed in this. Actually, I got started on a couple hours ago and had some calls and some things, and life happened, and had to kind of reroute a little bit. I want to bring you all this story and share some input on it before we get too happy about some things on it. And as you can see here, the headline says very clearly, "Long time coming." And this is from the Daily Beast. 5 years after killing Eric Garner, NYPD fires Officer Daniel Pantaleo. Garner's last words, "I can't breathe," became a rallying cry for justice in New York and across the country after a police officer choked him. And here is Mr. Pantaleo, and I'm assuming that's how you pronounce his name. So, a couple things, talk about real quick. We know this is the gentleman, this is the officer or former officer that bore the responsibility, the primary responsibility, if you will, for choking Eric Garner, the one who was standing on a street corner in Staten Island, New York, allegedly selling loose Newports back in 2014. Garner died that day. He had an asthma attack. He was saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." So I just want to, some things are coming to me or jumping out at me, and is what do? I tell you what jumps out at me, and I let you go from there. First thing that jumps out at me, the fact that this case was in 2014. That's when it occurred. The event occurred in 2014, and it is now 2019. So it took 5 years. 5 years. Eric Garner died that day. But this officer went on paid desk duty, continuing to draw paid benefits, health benefits, you name it, all of that. 5 years. Okay. So in 2019, just a couple weeks ago, a local department judge said he needs to be fired. Okay. Did NYPD fire him? Did they follow the advice of the judge? No. Instead of him being on paid desk duty, they suspended him. They didn't immediately fire him as the judge recommended. They suspended him. I gotta wonder why. Why didn't they just follow the judge's instructions? Is it possible they were trying to figure out some way to work around and not actually terminate him? Well, kudos to the family, his wife, the kids, whomever else, anyone boots on the ground that's helping with the case, putting pressure on the appropriate people. They kept putting pressure, and they finally got some results. They wanted him terminated. They wanted his pension gone. They wanted, his ability to just continue doing life like it's okay to stop, which, would be fair. And in all fairness, the city did settle, I think, a $5 million, was it $5 million lawsuit? 5.9, right at $6 million lawsuit, in 2015, I want to say, to compensate them for his death, his death while he was in custody. But so let's talk about the things that are jumping out at me. Again, case happened in 2014. Garner died that day. Daniel Pantaleo was put on paid desk duty, and for 5 years he continued to work and draw his pay, his benefits, etc. In 2019, a local department judge said fire him. A couple weeks later, and the department, NYPD, chose to suspend him. I guess more pressure, and they finally today announced that he was terminated. So I had to ask myself first, why now? Why are you terminating him now? Why didn't you terminate him immediately? Why didn't you terminate him when the information was sent to the grand jury? Why didn't you terminate him any of those times that you looked at the video? Why didn't you terminate him prior to now. Excuse me. And I have to remember, we're coming up on elections. Mayor Blasio, Bill Blasio, I think when he was elected as mayor, one of the things he was targeting or supposedly going to address was the over-policing of blacks and Latinos in the New York area, or in New York. And my understanding is it has slacked up some. However, how do you look at this blaring case in front of you and do nothing? And that was one of the platforms that you ran on, or one of the item agendas on your platform. There's some talk about him trying to run to be the Democratic nominee for the upcoming presidential election. There's some talk about, there have been some questions about how he's handling this case. Pantaleo is still getting paid his money. Garner's gone. We can't bring him back. No amount of money can bring him back. And you want to be president? But I listened to, and I didn't pull it up, you can find it. I listened to the press conference this morning where he said, the police chief said, bottom line, Garner should not have resisted. The officer took a job to protect and serve, yada, yada, yada. Neither one of them knew the consequences in their actions would be Garner's death. And I can believe that. That I would believe. I don't think Eric Garner figured when he said, or when he did not jump to the officer, when he resisted arrest or whatever it was they say he did, that it would lead to his death. I'm not even comfortable to say that Officer Pantaleo or any of the other officers present had anticipated it would lead to Garner's death in the actions that they were doing. But either way, Garner died. And this is what the police chief said. Either way, he did, and there must be a consequence. Again, my problem is how long it took to deliver the consequence, and it was only up under political pressure. Because if that were the case, you would have walked in from the jump in and said, get rid of him. So you had to have some pressure. But a couple other things. This case went before a grand jury on Staten Island. And the grand jury on Staten Island refused to indict him. My concerns with that, the people. This grand jury said the man, Garner, or anyone else should allow themselves to be harassed by the police. Now, my understanding is there's a history. They knew who Garner was. They knew he was selling loose Newport. And they were specifically sent to go deal with him and others that were selling loose cigarettes on the street. So they knew, and they went to him, with that in mind, whatever the case may have been. But because there was a history there, you have to wonder. Garner's sitting here, he's saying, you know what, if y'all been harassing me, whatever, no, today's not the day. Whatever. But again, we say he resisted. But the people, the grand jury, when they refused to indict him, Mr. Pantaleo, they said Garner's refusal to jump at the officer's command and how high the officer says was worthy of punishment, even to the point of his death. They said, oh, it's his fault he died. Because he would not jump when the officer said jump, and thus he wound up with an asthma attack and he died, and so what? That's what their actions say to me. When they said no to criminal charges, they said an officer can decide to take your life because you don't jump. And there's no consequence to the officer. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. And that's what your police chief just said. No, there should be a consequence for the action. Because as long as we don't give out consequences, the actions will continue. If there are consequences, officers will begin to think. They will be hopefully wiser in their actions. They will begin to try to use that same tact and that same talking down and that same de-escalating and that same continuum of force that they use for others. When the grand jury refused to indict, they also said, we have the power to act. We have the power to do something. We have the power to hold this man accountable, but we won't. But what we will do is we will also send this man back to his department, to his employer, and let his employer decide if they want to take action against him, but we won't. So you sent the police to police the police. Really? Or you sent the police to be policed. Really? And he got his training from those same police. But in all fairness, the chokehold had been banned sometime previously. And the video very clearly shows the guy was in, Pantaleo had Garner in a chokehold. So in all fairness, they weren't supposed to be doing the chokehold, and that was employed. And I would believe if it weren't for that, there would be no accountability. If it were not video and enough outcry and enough pressure being put on about that chokehold, about him not following departmental procedure, there would have been no consequence. They're refusing to indict. Says what? This Garner the grand jury's refusal to indict says Garner and anybody else has no right to a reasonable civil discord with an officer, conversation back and forth. The officer come to you, you do. You don't ask no questions, you don't discuss, none of that. You just do. Why is it then he obviously was posing no immediate danger or threat to anyone? Selling loose Newports, yeah, he was posing the same threat to the purchaser or to his customers that the convenience store is posing to the same customers that go in and buy a whole pack. So technically, you could say he was posing less of a threat because he was only selling one compared to 20 or 10 or however many come in a pack. I think 20, 30 come in a pack. However many come in there. But I look at all these shooters around the city, around the country, who have a right to discord, who have a right to conversation, who have a right to be brought in without hands being laid on them and them tackled to the ground and their lives being choked out from underneath them. And they're actively engaged in behavior that's an immediate threat to themselves, the officers, and anyone else around. And this man was not engaged in those sort of activities. And he had no right to discord. He had no right to discussion. He had no right to conversation. The family also pursued civil rights charges at the federal level. And the feds refused to pursue it. They decided, no, we're not going to pursue civil rights violations. So what they said was the same thing that the grand jury said. They said, we're going to stand with our officers even when they use poor judgment, even when they make mistakes, or even when they take someone's life, intentionally, unintentionally, accidentally, slip of the wrist, slip of the hand, mistake, forget, whatever the excuse is, we're going to stand with the officer over the people, over the victim. That's a problem, people. The feds said, no matter what the officer does, period. If you don't comply, we ain't standing with you. So if the officer walked up to you and tell you, shoot your mama, and you don't comply, he can come up with whatever kind of story he want to come up with. He can beat you down, damn near kill you, and we're going to stand with the officer because you didn't comply. And I promise you, he's not going to tell you that he told you to shoot your mama. He's going to say he told you to put your hands up or something else or whatever. Hopefully you're alive to tell the story. Eric Garner wasn't alive to tell the story. We don't know what all actually transpired, how many words transpired for sure. How much more was said that we didn't get on tape, on video somewhere? How much more? Eric Garner didn't live to tell the rest of it. So here we are now, 5 years later, and he is finally fired and stripped of his pension. But I ask, how much time did he have to stockpile his cheese? To make plans, to move funds, to work extra, because, you know, as a police officer, they worked them extra side jobs and, you know, tax-free, cash money, whatever. So how many extra jobs? He's desk duty, so, you know, he's not as stressed as he would be if he were on the street. He's got a set schedule. He's not doing a whole lot of reports and stuff. He's off. If your schedule is 6 to 2 o'clock, he off. So he's got opportunity to go work and make some more money on the side. He's had 5 years to get prepared for this. How much time did Garner's family have? How much time did they have to come up with funeral money? How much time did they have to make arrangements for the adjustment of the income in the household? None. None. Also take a note that there were, 10, 12 other officers? I think 11, some number, somewhere thereabouts. Only one other officer was disciplined for this situation. Now, this is not by her, so I won't focus so much on her, although that could be a whole separate video. The first supervisor on the scene, Kizzy, somebody, I can't call her name right now. She was the first supervisor on the scene. She was disciplined. Well, last I checked, when you are an accessory to a crime, when you're witnessing the crime, you're cheering it on, you're participating in any way, you're just as guilty. Why didn't those other officers have some sort of discipline as well? Because there was no intent to even discipline Daniel Pantaleo. Policy says you had to take him off the street, so you did. And you kept him in his job, and you did nothing to the other officers. But we're going to go ahead and make the black female supervisor our scapegoat, and we're going to punish her. So that way, you know, somebody else is punished, not just the officer. Mr. O'Neill is the police chief. And he's the one that did the press conference saying, you know, yeah, we're going to fire Pantaleo, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the problem. Another problem. The police union immediately denounced his decision. Oh no, he has bowed to anti-police extremists. Mr. Pantaleo's dismissal sends a message to the city that you're not going to stand behind your officers when they make arrests. Man, you're stretching. You are stretching. Pantaleo did something wrong. There needs to be a consequence. It led to someone's death, and there needs to be a consequence. Obviously, and I see it actually opposite. I see the fact that the man was not fired immediately, or at least suspended immediately, not desk duty, suspended without pay immediately. The NYPD was showing they support their officers. They were showing they stand with their officers even when their officers do wrong. The fact that they fired him said to me pretty much the political wheels are turning. It says to me backlash from how it was handled is coming around. It's probably hitting people's careers, probably hitting their social scene, probably hitting their little side jobs, and definitely positioning them not to be able to go forward or do some things that they want to do. So now we need to go and tone this down. We need to make amends for this. Not that they want to, but because they have to, because it's keeping them from doing other things that they want to do. The political wheels are turning. It also says people, you know, when we look at it, people are tired of being mistreated. Black people, more specifically, are tired of police over-policing them, using excessive force, and they getting gunned down, choked down, beat down, you name it, coming up. Bottom line, they leave home and they don't come back. And it's at the hands of police. Folk are getting tired, and they're starting to respond. That you see mass shootings all over the place. So then you also see people who are actually targeting police. Well, you know what? Some of them might be some false flags here and there, whatever, those are individual cases, but we're going to lump them all together right now. You have people shooting at the police. So what that says is people are getting tired. And these are not just black folk. These are white folk, pink folk, green folk, whatever folk you want to call them. These are not just the black people that are shooting back at the police or shooting at the police. These are other races as well. Folk are getting tired because the police have been unpoliced for too damn long. They've been unchecked for too damn long. So the political arena now says, hey, wait a minute. We need to calm the people down. We need to give them something so that they will back off of trying to attack the police, or they will back off of feeling like it's okay to attack the police. And while I understand the rationale, I question the timing. Because if you wanted to deal with Pantaleo, you would have already dealt with him. This is only, Philadelphia just last week, the man, and he wasn't a mental person. He may have some mental issues, but they went to his house to serve a warrant. And with everything that's going on with the climate, with police and black people, I don't know what was going through his mind, why he started shooting. I don't know. I can't say. But I can imagine with everything that's been going on, when you have interaction with the police, your assumption is you ain't coming home. Well, he was already home, so his assumption was he ain't leaving. That I can surmise that. The rest of it, I don't know. I'm not following it that close. That's for his attorneys and his, family and stuff to deal with. But the current environment across the country, people of every color are getting tired of the police over policing, using excessive force, and going well above and beyond what is necessary to hold these arrests, to detain these people, to do their jobs. And we're seeing police corruption left and right, not just in people dying, but we're seeing police officers caught up in drug stuff, planting drugs, planting blood, fixing cases, fixing this, fixing stuff just to get arrests. We're seeing officers fixing stuff after the arrest. We're seeing reports being forged and modified. And I'm going to tell you my personal stories. But yeah, I have personal direct experience in some, not experience doing, but experience with it having been done to me. People are getting tired. So what do? We go ahead and we use Daniel Pantaleo as our exception. Since Eric Garner's case is well known to everyone, we're going to blast it front page news that we fired him, so people can calm down a little bit and stop their pressure against police, over policing and excessive use of force. Well, I tell people, don't stop your pressure. Keep marching, keep rallying, keep writing letters, keep going to city hall meetings, whatever it is you're doing. Now, I'm not telling y'all shooting people to go shoot up. I'm saying the ones who are doing it in legal manners, proper ways, continue the pressure that you're putting. Because one person is not enough. That doesn't say things have changed. That just says we got our scapegoat. We're going to let him ride this one. Amber Geiger's still down there in Texas. She ain't going nowhere. And that's the other name that came to my head right now, but there are others still. Don't get it twisted. This has very little to do with this officer and his behavior. This has very little to do with his mistake, his intentional, unintentional, whatever his thinking was that led to Eric Garner's death. This is all about political. This is all about a bigger picture. We're coming up on election year. There's been a lot of political pressure behind the scenes, a lot of backlash behind the scenes. And what? Officers are getting scared. Police are getting scared to do their jobs because they don't know when they put on those uniforms and walk out in the street if somebody's going to try to take them out just because. So this is about trying to quell the public. And I say, officers know that they're trained to target blacks and Hispanics more harshly, and especially in the New York area, and they know it. And they're not the only ones. Officers all around the country are being trained to see black people as vicious, as violent, as subhuman, as something to easily just get rid of, as a pest, as an animal, as something that has no value. So it's no big deal if you take their life. And if someone catches you on camera, we'll just fix stuff. We'll figure out a way to take care of it. This is what officers have been trained. And let's think about this. When they go to the firing range, the targets that they're shooting, oftentimes that's what? A black silhouette. A black silhouette. And in one particular jurisdiction, it was the face of black muggers that they were shooting at on the range when they went to go qualify. So where's the messaging? What is the messaging being sent? And so I'm sure when they get into a shooting situation, they're seeing that target. They're seeing what they did on the range. And they're shooting to kill. They're not shooting to disable. And in this case, no, Pantaleo did not shoot. But the impact is just the same. The man's still dead. We see how many officers just aggressively handle black people. And in the New York area, Latinos. Just aggressively handle them because they don't deserve. They're subhuman. So they don't deserve to be treated with any kind of decency, human decency. Yeah, right. Okay. Bottom line, I want y'all to think about this. And I'm glad that something is being done. But I say continue the pressure. New Yorkers, good job. But just know that there's a bigger picture here. This man was not fired because it's the right thing to do. Because otherwise they would have did it 5 years ago. Or even a year ago. Once you rode through, going before the grand jury, the feds would have picked it up. Somebody would have done something prior to now. If it was about him, when the local judge, a local departmental, NYPD departmental judge, an internal affairs type of situation, when they said fire him, he would have been fired. And he wasn't. He was suspended. He's being fired now for a reason. And it's a much bigger picture than what we think. Or than what it looks like. So just keep that in mind and continue to pressure, and hopefully one day we will get to a point where we don't have to have these kinds of stories, to where law enforcement, if it must be, will treat people with basic decency. We'll treat everybody with basic decency. Unless someone comes to them gun in hand or, knife wielding for real, not some wallet that you think is a knife. Or, a bat or something in a very clearly violent manner. Don't put your hands on them unless you have to. Don't have this whole mindset of you're above the law, or you are the law. And I said turn around, and if they don't, then you're just going to go at them and be violent. Well, that's not necessary. Not necessary at all. And a damn sure don't take no whole team of officers to do it. You came with a team of officers because you knew his size. So you came prepared to physically wrestle this man down. You know what? That's what I need to say about that. Let me not go any further with it, because now I'm going to get mad. Be blessed, y'all.